the continuous or progressive tense. Now, as I said there, it is sometimes called continuous or sometimes called progressive. It's the same thing depending on who's writing and who's calling it. So basically what we see here, the easiest way of identifying the continuous tense is it ends, the verb there ends in the letters ing. So this is the structure. We have the subject. Subject, if you remember from the previous lesson, is the actor, the main entity that's doing the action. That's the subject. Followed by a verb, or the verb be. The be here, if you remember from the previous lesson again, is this is in an infinitive state, but there are different forms or different forms of be, like was, or is, or been, are, am. Those are different forms of be, depending on what the subject is there. And then finally, that verb there, be, would be acting, if you remember again from your previous lesson where we discussed verbs. We said there are things called auxiliary verbs. So be here is acting as an auxiliary verb. It's not the actual verb that we're looking at. It's just there to assist in developing that sentence. That sentence look proper. So the actual verb now itself is the one that the action that we are actually interested in. That's what will end in ing. For instance, I am talking. The subject here is I. Remember, subject is usually represented using a noun or a pronoun. Be is the auxiliary verb. The form of be that we're using currently now is am, because this is first person singular. I am. And then the verb, the actual action that we're doing is to talk. So that actual action is, we take the verb and end it in ing. So it's talking. I am talking. Before we proceed, please remember to like and share this video. And kindly subscribe to the channel for more educational content like this. Present continuous tense or present progressive tense. Now, if we look at present continuous, we're basically saying that the action is ongoing. It's happening now as we speak. She is sleeping in class. That shows that this action is continuing as we speak. It's also possible to use the continuous present or progressive present to represent something that's going to happen in the near future, usually as a directive. Like if you look at this example there that says, tomorrow we are all watching the breakfast show. Yes. On Wednesday, you are writing your test. Now, what's important here about the continuous tense, what actually causes that point of difference is the verb be. I'm going to go back to the structure there and say we have the subject, we have the auxiliary verb be. So, and then we have the actual verb that we're talking about. The auxiliary verb be, its time factor is the one that determines if you call it past, present, or future tense. If it's in the form of the present, am, is, etc., we say it's present continuous tense. If it's in the form of the past, like was or were, we say it's past continuous tense. And then, of course, if it's in the present or the future, where we will see it with the will be, right? That is the future continuous. So here are some examples about the continuous present tense. So you can just have an appreciation of these various examples. And if you look at this table here, it actually expresses it even more, it clarifies it even more, but we can use it to explain an idea that is something that's happening right now, or something which which takes time to happen. It's not necessarily in the process right now, but it is something that takes that expands over a significant length of time. That little chart there actually explains those a bit. If you have problems understanding it, you can always refer to me. Here are some other examples. Rough examples. Here now we can see that the present continuous tense, we have the subject where it says positive form there. We have the subject, and for the subject there we've used pronouns. Pronouns have been used there, and it shows how they relate to the pronouns, the form of be that occurs with each pronoun. So if we're using the first person, that's I, form of be that's going to exist there is am. I am starting. If we're using the third person, which is he, she, or it, this is in singular, we will see that the form of be there will be is. And then finally, if we're using second person or first person plural, or third person plural, you see that we use are. So we are, you are doing this. So having said that, the negative form basically means you just have the not. I think this is quite self-explanatory. And then the question form there, that's where you're asking questions. You can see that what you simply do is you change the position of the be and the subject. Instead of I am eating, it would be am I eating. Past continuous tense or past progressive tense. Right, so let's move on to the past progressive. As I said earlier, the main point of difference between when you're identifying them, the main point of difference is that the verb be will be the one that determines if it's past, future, or present. If the verb be is represented in its past form, we will then say this is the past continuous tense, regardless of what the tense itself is representing. Regardless of what the tense itself, what the situation itself there, if the situation happened in the past or present or future. That is not so important. What's important is the form of the verb be. I think that's a point that you should see and note as a point of emphasis. Now, what happens here is with the past continuous, you will have be in its past tense, or was, were, etc. And then the main verb would end in ing, yes. But the important point to make is that with past continuous, there should always be a point of termination. The past continuous tense implies that something was happening up to a certain point, or until there was an interruption, or until the point where you are concerned, the issue that you're concerned with in that point, in the past. So it stopped happening at that point, or you became interested in it at that point. So it's always important to actually specify that point when you're giving your examples. It is not sufficient to say I was sleeping. You should specify I was sleeping when what happened. You should always specify the rest of the sentence when something happened. That goes for both past and future continuous. The point of interruption or termination should be specified. Now, in normal speaking, when you're in conversation, it is easy for you to just say I was sleeping because you're probably answering a question, and that question itself had implied the point of termination or interruption. I can answer the question, what were you doing when your phone rang, with just I was sleeping? Because by saying I was sleeping, it's implying, because the question itself was already asked, I'm therefore now saying I was sleeping when the phone rang, even though I don't actually spell it out. Okay, so having said that, we can look at a few examples there. We see here that the examples given here do not have the rest of the sentence. This is just in spoken form. But it's important to remember that when writing examples in your test, in your assignment, these questions, these sample sentences are not related to any question that was asked, and therefore there's no implied interruption point. So you have to spell out the interruption point. I was sleeping here. I was starting when this happened. The one part should also be included in your exam.
Future continuous tense or future progressive tense.
Future continuous or progressive shows something that will be in progress at a certain point in time. Remember, just like with the past, we're looking at a certain point in time. It will be happening. So you should include the when part as well in your example. So it's very similar to everything else that I just said with the continuous tense, except that you'll actually be able to differentiate it immediately by the use of the word will. Otherwise, the rest is the same. It will be happening. And remember, in conversation, you can just say, I will be sleeping. But when just giving examples which do not have any context, you should provide the context. I will be sleeping is not a sufficient answer unless a context had been given. That is why we're saying in conversation, if I ask you the question, what do you think you'll be doing at 10 p.m.? If you just answer, I will be sleeping, you're basically saying I'll be sleeping at 10 p.m. I've already added that at 10 p.m. for you in the question that I asked, so there's no need for you to repeat it. But when you're giving an example of that context, you should always include that. Okay, so here are some other examples that you may want to look at.
Like this video and subscribe to this channel for more such content.